Hey everyone, welcome to the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. I was trying to work out some tech issues. I am not seeing us on Instagram, but if you're out there seeing us on Instagram, let us know because it should be live.
Let's see.
And trying to figure
this out. We're there.
Oh, we're there. Okay, great.
Yeah, I see us.
I don't see us. It's not coming up on my...
Look.
Okay, awesome. Okay, for some reason it wasn't coming up on my feed. How interesting. Okay, so, all right. Well,
I'll monitor the.
Yes, you monitor it because I can't see it. So here we go. Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about something really exciting. We're going to be talking about how cross-generational teams can foster a healthy culture by breaking silos and many other things as well. This is such an exciting topic for us, this whole idea of cross-generational mentorship and leadership. We are going to get into this because there are so many dynamics to this, and we really need to look at it first from how many generations are out there? Many. There are, if you're just talking big headings, we're talking five generations. And that's taken us back from those that were born in 1925 to 45.
Wow.
Okay. Those are traditionalists. All the way to Gen Zs. So in between, we've got baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Zs, and then we've got subcategories of that. But we're not going to get into that because that really, we're not going to get into those weeds today because there are other things that we want to talk about. And we really want to stick to this topic, and that is how cross-generational teams really foster a healthy culture and community. How can we do this? How can we break down those silos? How can we harness strengths across the ages? How can we build resiliency and adaptability? How can we boost innovation and creativity? Did I just mention like a million things there?
Because there are.
Because there really are. And Jen and I are here talking about this because we are soon to launch something really big that has to do with a lot of this great stuff, right? And we've got so much quality information about this because let me tell you, it changes the landscape of your company. When you understand this and when you allow and are open to change when it comes to a cultural shift, and you train your people and you mentor them and you share knowledge, it makes such a huge difference. So we did mention breaking down silos. So I really want to encourage input here. Jen, you're monitoring the
Instagram.
Yeah, the Instagram. And there's a lot of like, oh, here we go. Let me see if I can. Oh, nope, it's not even coming up for me. This is so
weird.
bizarre. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's just so strange. Okay, it's not telling me we're even going live. Okay, so monitor that, and I'm going to monitor LinkedIn. And by the way, folks, we're not just on LinkedIn, Instagram, on the Emotional Entrepreneur page, but we're also on YouTube. So go check us out there. Leave us comments as we continue because we really want to hear from you. We like the engagement, and we really want to share what you have to say about this particular topic. So let's break this down. Let's go into breaking down silos. What does it mean to really break down silos? That means to encourage communication. That means to create shared goals as you are nurturing that communication. How do you do that? How do you nurture communication? How do you encourage other people from different generations to talk? Jen, ideas?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we can start with is coming from a place of understanding. So, for example, if you're a millennial and you are working with people that are in the Gen X category, Gen X group, I think it's important for to understand, and this goes both ways, to understand what are the things that each person grew up with culturally. What were the things, especially with technology, what was around at that time, or understanding like the mindset or how people were raised in those eras. And when we come from that understanding, then we have some compassion and understanding of like, oh, okay, this is why maybe this had happened in that time frame when they were growing up, why they might have some fear around technology, well, why there's a bit more patience. And then vice versa, if you're looking at a younger generation, we hear this all the time. I think millennials get a bad rap, like, my gosh, they're not responsive, or, there's a different type of communication in terms of like, getting back to you. There's all kinds of things we've heard on both sides. And so I think the overarching thing of what I'm trying to get at is coming from a place of understanding before being quick to put blame and accusation and stereotypes, right? I think it's really important to understand culturally and societally what somebody has grown up in, to get a better understanding of why are they reacting to certain issues and problems and challenges that may come up, especially in the workplace or even personally, so that you understand, oh, okay, this is why they're responding or reacting this way.
Absolutely. I love that, Jen, because it really does have to do with our beliefs, our values, what has been ingrained in us, our conditioning. There are so many variables. It's not just one. It's our work ethic. It's the way that we communicate. It's technology that we do or do not use. It's our values. It's career goals, right? So a lot of this has to do with what we learned as we grew up from those that influenced us and, you know, incorporated that conditioning, whether it was religion, whether it was our parents, whether it was an aunt, uncle, or those that mentored us, right? Because they also grew up in a different time frame, right? Where they had a different work ethic, where maybe they believed that hard work gets you to that A, B, or C, right? That gets you to not just your goal, but it helps set your priorities. Right. And I think once, recently I had this conversation about goals and priorities, and there was a shift for me. It was like, it's not just your goals. It's what do you prioritize?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, I think that's such a key thing, the prioritization.
Yeah.
Because I know how many of us have written like a ton of goals, and then you're looking at it and it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be November. And you look at how many of those things have been accomplished. I always have to do a reset throughout the year and be like, okay, this is a little ambitious, but what do I really want to focus on? Like, what would feel good if I got which five of these things do I need to knock out so I can feel really good and feel like I made some progress? And sometimes I have to just be realistic. Okay, I can table this and maybe next quarter, or I can do these maybe next year, because trying to attack a list of 20 things, especially when they're all big projects, is just lame. It's just not realistic.
Well, and let me jump in here, Jen, because what I am hearing right now is you're going back to your goals. Here's the thing. When we talk about this, we've talked about this in the past. Hey, folks, if you haven't had an opportunity to check out this podcast or this live, go to our YouTube page, because there you will find all of the lives that we've done, all the videos, and there's some good content there. But what I want to jump on here, Jen, really quickly is when you talk about, and we've talked about before, setting our goals for the new year. And I was like, you know me, I'm like, whatever. Okay. It's not that it's not a good idea, but 2 weeks out, about 2 to 3 weeks out, you're going to see people like really decline in those goals, right? Because why? Why? First, it's really difficult to change a habit, right? And so if you don't know the steps to change a habit, that's going to influence how you reach that goal. Number one. Number two, and most importantly, is what are you making a priority? If you're not making that goal a priority, are you going to really achieve that goal by the end of A, B, or C? Are you really going to continue on with the steps? It's going to fall short. And it's going to fall short because guess what? It's not a priority. So I'm glad we stepped into this because breaking down silos means also companies, hello, making this a priority.
Right. I want to read a comment real quick. Viviana
Yes.
said this when we were
Yes.
talking about the different generations. She said,
Yes.
I have lavender hair right now. Yeah, Viviana is wild. I love her. And Viviana, I think you're Gen X. And said younger, oh wow, love it. It's so funny, different we all are, but so interesting. Because a certain generation gives the look. So, you know, imagine Viviana, she has this lavender hair and it's great. I mean, she wears bright colors. And so, yeah. And you know what, too, I've seen the other way too, where there's millennials and even some of the younger generations where they take on this look. It's very traditional and conservative.
Yes.
I've seen that too. So it's really wild to see certain aspects and traits adopted from other generations and they take it on. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I love it. And that's just like breaking down those assumptions, right? We all have assumptions about each other. Maybe like the traditionalists, maybe we think, oh my gosh, they're uber conservative. They really want to comply with, you know, the rules, the regulations. Not that we all don't, but like they're very, you know, rigid about it, right? And maybe that's an assumption. Maybe some of them, you know, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to take it back to my psych background, okay? I have worked in this field of human services for so long and in psych doing assessment. And I will tell you this, we all have the same feelings. So regardless of how you look, how you dress, do we all feel sadness?
Yep.
Do you all feel fear to some degree?
Yep.
Do you all feel joy? So our emotions are intact. We have a level of how we feel those emotions. Some of us are more shut down than others, and some of us are not. And that's just like when we're looking at these generations, right? We can go to the high end of conservative, or we could go to the lower end and say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I fall in there somewhere, but so do I, right? And I'm a Gen Xer, right? And so, you know, somebody might say, well, you know, she's pretty, you know, malleable, you know, she does, but on the other hand, my priority is I get things done. If I have a, you know, I have a deadline, let's do it, right? Let's get on this. Let's work with group. Like, yeah. So I have some of those characteristics. I have some of the characteristics of traditionalists, and I also have some characteristics of the Gen Z when I don't want, you know, when I'm thinking, well, I like these digital things. I value, you know, immediacy. And here's the thing I love this about Gen Z. You get on with them. They don't want to talk about the day. They want to talk about what's the next task, right? What's the next task? Let's get on to the next task. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then leave me alone.
You know what I love about the generation? Because I really do this. They don't want to get on the phone.
Yes.
And everything is through like text and just voice memos. I'm like,
absolutely. That is so Jen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just get me on the phone so I can just get on with it. And I don't have to keep texting. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
I do. I do.
Agenda.
It's like notes. They're like notes. And then it's like, let me go away and do the work and then come back and give you the end thing. And then I don't want to work on it. It's like, I just want to go away and give the final product.
Yeah, exactly. And she, you know, that's where we're similar because we do like to go away and give the final product, right? But give me a phone call, let's get this done, and boom, we're done. Let's like, we don't have to like do a lot of small talk. And Jen and I have Zooms, and sometimes we have a lot of that small talk because we need it.
Right.
And that's what we need to gauge. And there's the sensitivity, right? There's just the emotional intelligence. Then we draw into that emotional intelligence, we draw into the emotional agility, and then we draw into the adaptive responsiveness. So how are we responding to what is being asked? How are we responding to that, to that other human being? So There's so much to breaking down silos, and one of those big things is communication and that transparency and being real and being ready to share. Being ready to share about what your priorities are, what you care about, how you communicate, and also how you might collaborate, and being open to the idea of, hey, I'm open to understanding this generation. Because let me tell you, from traditionalists to Gen Zs, we are so different because guess what, folks? Times have changed. Tech has changed. The
Yeah.
way that we do business has changed. But one thing that has not changed is how we relate, how we connect. And guess what? If we take this back, and Jen has heard me, many of you have heard me say this before. If you take this back to the very foundation of things, we are connectors. We are human. We are people that want that connection. We go back into the ages and we needed each other to survive. Guess what? Today, we have each other to thrive.
Right.
So, so take a look at this. Just understand that breaking down silos does take some work because we're breaking down assumptions. We're understanding one another and what we have been experiencing or have experienced throughout many years. If you look at traditionalists and if they were born in 1945 or 1940, they've been around for a long time. So guess what? They've got a lot of wisdom to share.
Right.
But guess what? So do Gen Zs, so do millennials, so do Gen Xs, and so do baby boomers. And I think it's important as we encourage open communication is to encourage transparency and to build a trust within our working communities. How do we do that? By being honest. How do we do that? By having that adaptive responsiveness. I know I've talked about it before. If you're interested in hearing more about that, we can chat. You can DM me. But that really is being in a situation and understanding. Here's where the EQ comes in. Being able to recognize your emotions. And then the EA is the emotional agility, being able to be more agile in a situation with a person or an organization or with those that or a group with whom you're speaking with. And then also how you are responding. So what's your end goal in regards to how you're interacting with this individual, with this group, or with this company?
Yeah. Let me read some of Bibiana's responses. She said, I'm kind of catching up on things.
Yeah.
I've learned not to share my goals with the family in my house. Instead, I get up early and get things done in super secret. Yeah, I was just thinking about that too. I was reading, I'm recording the audiobook right now. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother beast. But it was I talked about that where it's like sometimes you can't share those goals with family and friends because they don't understand. And so this is why it's so important for us to build community, which we all have here. And so she also said totally like the preppy accountant look. Yeah, I could totally see Viviana in the preppy accountant look. And she said, rule schmools. And she's like, I'm like that too. I love to have fun and cut loose, but when it's time to focus, I'm a laser. So that's it. And she's like, what? No meeting about the meeting to schedule the next meeting? Oh my gosh. Just yeah.
Well, that's true about Bibiana too. And by the way, if you folks don't know Bibiana, and I like to do shout outs here too, Bibiana is an incredible author. She's published so many books. And as a matter of fact, she just released her newest release just yesterday, I believe. Yay! Bibiana, I know you're on with us, so please add in the comments the name of your book. I love to share. I love to make sure that, the community that's with us, join us. Please join us. I love to share what you're doing and engage with you. This is so important. Jen and I love to do that. So
that's it for Viviana's announcements.
Okay, so we're going to read any more of do we have any more of the comments that we need to read?
Nope, that was it for Instagram.
Okay,
for now.
So here's the other thing. It's about harnessing other people's strengths. To break down silos, we need to be open to what those strengths are across the ages because they are so important. So we have these people who, possibly or potentially really like to be, have that hierarchical work arrangement, right? There's some people who like that. There's some people who like hardworking. There's some people who are hardworking but like to be independent. There's some other people who like to be independent and are very tech savvy. But how do we bring this all together and harness really these diverse set of skills? And I think that's one area right now that companies are kind of struggling with. They're
Mhm.
struggling with because we have these hybrid work situations, and they're wondering, how do I bring this community together when half of it's at home, working from home, and the other half may be working in an office? How are we doing that? How are we opening up communication? How are we building trust? How are we aligning our goals and our priorities? How is this happening with your company? Folks that are listening out there, or if you know a company that's struggling, how is this happening? How are you gauging this? How are you assessing this? And how are you being open to new hybrids of what your culture looks like and how they're functioning? And
Right.
then how are you transitioning into these hybrids, or even transitioning like Amazon sent all their folks back to work? So into the office. So how are you transitioning all these people who were either working from home, working from the office, or there was a hybrid approach? And how are you transitioning these people back into the office? This is a lot. And then how are you building that culture across those generations, right? With that sensitivity, that EQ, that AR, that EAAR. So all the things that we mentioned, right? And so how is that playing a part of this? But also how is communication, transparency, breaking down silos, diverse skills? How are you embracing all of this to understand your community, to make it thrive, to help it thrive? Jen?
That's a good question. I almost want to think they're not. I think sometimes the priority might just be let's just get everyone back in because it's been 4 years, it's been 3 years, and I think some companies are so busy trying to adjust now that pandemic is in the past and whatnot. I mean, COVID's still here, but now it's just like the flu. But it's like, now how do we get everybody back in? So I'm curious if the companies are also focusing on, like, what about, I saw this reel I think like a month ago. I shared it with you. I told you about this summer about how, like, what about the younger generation who was hired during pandemic? So they never, I mean, I knew people who got jobs during that year and worked remotely, never met anybody in the company. I mean, it's wild. Never went into the office. They weren't a millennial, but I knew people that went through that.
Yeah.
And so what about the younger person that came out of college, got hired, has been working remotely, and doesn't have that experience of being in an office with other people and other generations? And so I think there's a lot of different hurdles in regards to just reacclimating everybody back into the office, especially if you've never stepped foot in one and you were straight out of school or you were hired really young. You got those kinds of dynamics going on. Then you got the generational thing going on. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, I've never been in this office. And it's like there's a lot to learn. And so I'm curious to see and find out, what are companies, what are managers, what are these companies doing to help their people adjust to all this different stuff?
Jen, I love what you just said there, because that adjustment. Okay, so first of all, we've had a lot of Gen Zs miss major milestones like graduations,
Right.
like starting high school together. Like, I mean, there's just starting college together. There were so many milestones missed that really help support communication, socialization, all these incredible factors that help build that person, right? And help build that person's resilience and agility. I talked about agility, right? The adaptive resilience and emotional agility. I've talked about that. And a lot of times when we don't have that connection with other human beings, we kind of miss out on these incredibly important human factors. And that means that creates connection. So if we don't know how to create connection because we've missed some of those milestones, missed going to school together, and we're doing things remotely, you might say, well, but we have connection. We have connection digitally. Yes, I get it. But there is a difference. Tell me if I'm wrong, but if you don't have a gauge to compare that, how do you know? How do you know the difference between this digital response and in communication to an in-person response and communication and connection that you have?
Right.
It's different. It feels different. It looks different. It's not that we can't conduct business in a digital way because we have been. We were forced out there to create things that worked. Now here's what's really interesting for those of us, me and Jen, that have like put this program together, this new program that we're going to launch here pretty soon. We're from a generation X, right? So we were able to see what it looked like really before all of this automation and these digital applications to what it looks like now. So we have this point of comparison. As a matter of fact, when I lived in California, I'm a California girl in my heart, I will always be, but I lived in Santa Cruz, and over the hill in San Jose was Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley was where all this stuff was being generated from hardware to software, right? And also in Santa Cruz too, we had a lot of companies come into Santa Cruz because that's where a lot of the people from Silicon Valley wanted to live. And so then I went to Berkeley and I saw all of these engineers starting to develop, right? Develop these applications. So I saw what was happening in the industry and how they were really creating this digital space and what that looked like and what that felt like. And a couple of my sorority sisters were engineering majors, were being pulled into the Silicon Valley. And let me tell you, they were like people that loved to stay in their room, that didn't want to come out. And we would be like knocking their doors. Hey, you guys coming to our meeting? Come on. They were like, we're
Wow.
working on our apps. We're doing it. I'm like, it's time to take showers.
Wow.
It was hilarious because they just got so involved and so disconnected, but yet they're part of the sorority and wanted to be part of that community. But sometimes we had to pull them out, right? Pull them out of their computers, pull them off those computers and pull them out of that digital space to be with us. And I know we get caught in this realm of digital space, which is totally okay because we use it all the time. I love it. And I'm not negating the fact that we need it. What I am saying is there is a place where we also need to connect. And how are we doing this and breaking down silos if we're not connecting? If you don't have a plan to connect? Are you just throwing something out here in place and going, hey, we need to break down these silos. We need to encourage open communication and not giving the steps?
I doubt it's even going that far. It's like, hey, go figure it out. You're here to work. Like
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's, hey, you're here to get, you're here to do a job and get paid and figure it out. Like, I don't.
And that's a sad situation because here's the deal. Times are changing. We've got a lot of different generations in the workforce right now, and not everything is going to work for every person. So getting to know your workforce, getting to know your people in your realm, within your culture, if you even have culture, do you understand what that culture is in regards to work ethic, communication, technology, priorities? What is that? And do you have anybody overseeing and training? Because I believe that mentorship doesn't go without training. It trains your leaders. And guess what? It's not just people with all, for years of wisdom. It's also these new people coming in that are coming in with not just tech, but their own sense of beliefs and values. And so we really need to create these foundations. We have a better understanding and connection between the generations, but it takes some work. And that work, you will see an increase in success, a reduction in people leaving the workforce or leaving your company. So the retention factor is going to go up. And guess what? That reduces your cost as a company. So you're not looking at, oh my gosh, I need to retrain. We need to send them back through HR. We need to do A, B, and C. We need to get these people recertified or certified, right? So it's like it saves on costs, but it also shows that you care about your community most importantly.
Right. Or even worse, they decide like they don't like it and the culture wasn't great, or a lot of times from our research, we found that people were really disappointed because there wasn't anything to support them. And so they just leave. I mean, I've been there many times when I worked for somebody before where I've been like, I'm already getting the resume all spiffied up. And I'm like, I am out of here. It's only been 2 months, but I was already like, I'm planning my exit plan because I was like, they're not showing me that there's any growth. There's no support. They just expect me to come in here and do the work. And that's not a good thing to experience. And so you hired this person, they're going to be out of there after going through all the HR stuff and all the initial training, and then they're leaving. And now you're back on the cycle of, we got to find somebody else. But it's not just finding somebody else. It's like, you got to look at it. And I'm speaking to the companies and people, you know, in these situations that are hiring, like, you got to look at how are you supporting your people? How are you providing them the resources to know how to navigate through all these changes? So, before I forget, let me read some people.
You know what? Mine popped up too. So I was really stoked. Yeah, it finally popped up. I'm really delayed because one of the comments I wanted to read by Bibiana is, sometimes the social aspects in an office is more challenging than the job. Boom.
Okay, so you got that last part. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Was that the last one?
No, there's a couple more.
Okay, go ahead.
Some people don't even know how to dress for the office because of, oh my gosh. Right. It's like, I think it's like an example of like, I don't even know what business casual is anymore. It used to be back in the day, like maybe khakis and a button-down shirt. Yeah, polo shirt. That was casual because so it's like the definition of certain things has dramatically changed. Even informal, right? Like, well, what does it's like, you know, it's a gala, right? And I have to go through this all the time. And I'm like, well, what's your definition of formal? Is it black tie? Is it cocktail? Like, it's like nowadays it's so casual. Like, everything I feel like slid down the ladder of formality. So it's like, I don't even know what that is. And then she also mentioned, I can't imagine how hard it would be to go back to the office and to deal with that stuff. Like, if you are going through that, where especially if you've never experienced working in an office with other people in real life. And then going back to her book, she said, it's very experimental and not like anything else out there. Of course, it's scary and spooky because it's October. So again, shout out to Bibiana. And if you don't know about her writing, it's always got some cool, spooky element to it. So it's so appropriate for this time of year.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Yay, Bibiana. We're giving cheers to Bibiana. Yeah, and go check out her book on Amazon. So here's the thing. Okay, we've come to the close of the show, and I want to give the nuggets, but I think Bibiana, you know, she really tapped into something. Sometimes the social aspects in the office is more challenging than the job. That's right. And guess what gets to people? Are those social aspects. It's not that they can't do the job, but when it starts getting clouded with not understanding, misunderstandings, being misunderstood, by feeling alone, by feeling isolated, by feeling like they're in a silo and they can't reach out to somebody or they don't have a mentor, guess what? Guess what the result is? I'm out. See you later. Right. Done. And that's sad because that doesn't have to happen. That doesn't have to be the end result.
Yeah. And we saw when we did our survey, we saw that answer come from a lot of younger people, the millennials. They were the ones that were seeking the support from the higher ups and seasoned people. So, you know, if you're a company that isn't providing that, it's something to definitely look into.
And one of the other things they wanted, the millennials, they wanted job security. Amazing. Because guess what? Traditionalist Generation X, we wanted job security too. As a matter of fact, we stayed in jobs longer, right? And yet, this is also what millennials are looking for. They're looking for that job security. That's what they said in this small survey. And yet, it was a quantitative survey that showed us they want job security. And that's important. And if they don't feel like they're part of a culture, if they don't feel like they're part of a community, guess what? That's one of the main variables that says, guess what? Sorry, folks, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out of
here. And going back to what we were talking about in the very beginning about, you know, understanding what that particular generation is going through. So for example, in this particular question about the, you know, the younger generation wanting the job security, Think about it. Either they just got out of school, or now they're venturing into adulting, and so they have all these financial responsibilities that they're taking on. They might have, now their own rent, or maybe depending on where
Right.
you live. Yeah, depending on where you live, you might have a mortgage. Most likely not in California. And so there's all these different things that they're now learning to be, that I have to be financially responsible with these new things that I have to take care of, So the job security is top of mind, which is interesting because on the flip side, when we got responses from the older generation, us, Gen X and higher, it was like job security was not an issue anymore. I mean, it's not that it's not, but because I think we've gone through it, now we're looking for meaning and purpose. And then the work-life balance was really important. So I'm not saying that we didn't value like getting paid, but it was different. It was more of like, do I feel like I'm having meaning and purpose in this work that I'm doing? Am I able to still have, time at my job and my work and my career, but also still having that quality time with my family? So very interesting for us to see the results, that depending on what generation and where they were in that time frame, the priorities and what was important to those people, it shifted. And so as managers, again, as owners of companies, it's so important to understand, and that your people have that understanding of compassion of what is important to the other generations, because that's going to help you understand how to communicate with them, and how they're going to understand how to communicate with each other, because of understanding of, okay, that's what they're going through, this is what's important to them. And to understand, are we providing the resources, are we providing the support to help them feel that we care about them, that we are doing what we can to make this environment, and more importantly this company culture, something that they want to stay in.
Absolutely. Jen, we could go down this road for a long time. And, I think we've mentioned a lot of ways that we can break down silos, and how generational, we can have these cross generational teams that really foster one another and promote one another and support one another. And what you said too, it's really funny. And I want to tap back into this really quickly, and then we'll close with our nuggets. But what you said about, like millennials wanting that balance, on the opposite end of our Gen Xers wanting that balance, and our Gen Z and millennials really wanting that job security, right? And yet we were there at one time. I remember being there and being a graduate of Berkeley going, okay, I need a job. I need a job. I need a job that has insurance. I need a da da da. And I worked 3 jobs, just so I can afford, rent and this and that. And yet I was still, as a manager and a director, I was still seeing young folks taking on 2 or 3 jobs, even though one might have been full-time, to afford A, B, or C, right? So, I think we've all been there, and we've all experienced a little bit of that, right? And I think that's where we have those commonalities, where we can start breaking down those assumptions, and we can have that crossover and bridge those gaps between the generations. And that's why it's so important to have something in place that helps with these generational gaps, this cross-generational mentorship, right? Where we're breaking down the silos, where we're encouraging open communication, we're encouraging people to talk and share their priorities in an understanding way. So Jen, what is your nugget?
My nugget is to challenge you guys to, if you're in a work environment and you obviously, hopefully, not obviously, but hopefully you work with different generations. And maybe there might be that one person in your office that you never talked to, and they're in a completely different generation. I want to encourage you to start having a conversation with them. And I'm not, just start trying to befriend them at the minimum, and just start there to get an understanding of, like, you'll be surprised. I think once you get this conversation going, you'll be surprised at what you'll learn, and you'll be surprised at the questions they might ask you to see, where you guys have similarities and differences. But I think it would be a fun, exploring type of conversation.
Oh, I love that. That is a great suggestion.
Thank you. How about you?
Well, I mentioned priorities earlier in the show. And what I want you to do, what I'd love for you to do out there is, whether or not you're an individual or a company, list your priorities. Understand what those are, not just your goals. List what's important to you in regards to what is a priority: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. is as you understand those priorities, it's going to help you better understand the people that you're working with, those, the company that you're working with, because guess what? You're going to be able to ask them too, what are their priorities? And guess what? You're going to be able to see how yours and theirs align. So even when you're going into a job, understanding your own priorities and what your needs are before you get into a job, and please do your research. Please do your research. It'll help you better understand. And please, as companies, please do your research on the folks that you're looking at hiring as well. Ask them these questions
Right.
and allow them to ask you those questions as well, because you're looking for good matches. You're looking for people that are going to join the community and going to help support your goals as a company and your goals as an individual. All right. From there, thank you so much for joining us today. Any last or parting words today, Jen?
Bibiana's drinking champagne. She had one more comment. She said, I think people are at a disadvantage if they don't have a conservative upbringing, because there are things in corporate world people just expect you to know, and it might cost you raises and advancement. That is an excellent point. And again, I will just say and add to that's why it's so important to understand where is that other side coming from. Because I've seen younger generations, completely being aloof about like, well, why do they expect me to do that? I'm like, because that's how it is. I had a client like that, and she's like, I don't know why they expect me to do this, and I'm supposed to be able. I'm like, they hired you. You have a responsibility to do your job. I go, you ain't doing your own thing yet. Okay. You work somewhere. You have to, adhere to some of the things that they're telling you to do, because that's your job. But it was really interesting for me I was just like, wow, I have to tell this person this. So it's really interesting. So that's a great point.
But okay, I'm going to add to this and then we'll go. But I mean, we can go on for because there's so many variables. But here's the thing, folks. When I mentioned that these young folks not meeting milestones or having these certain milestones, or starting a job from a remote place and not being in office, we didn't give them the opportunity to transition and onboard, right? To let them know what those expectations are and to have that integration with maybe a mentor or know their priorities. I mean, they're new.
But I will tell you that this was not a new thing for this person.
Okay.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. But this one, I will say, she had the attitude. She had an attitude of like, that it was entitled, and I'm like, that's not how this works. And she had been in other work situations, so it wasn't somebody like was like 20 that just got hired straight out of school. Yeah.
But I think it happens, that entitlement can happen from traditionalists to Gen Zs, and we've seen it, right? And so it's like breaking down these assumptions and like at least trying, come on, people, try to understand each other, because if we don't, that's when we see like goals as business owners get like, like tossed aside or waylaid, because it's like, oh my gosh, these people, my workforce, they don't understand what the priority is here, right? Because maybe we haven't explained it the right way. Maybe we haven't provided enough mentorship. Maybe it's just like that Maslow hierarchy, everything's coming from top down. Now, I've been part of a lot of micro cultures, from military to mental health to lots of different things to understand culture, right? And yet we're still having a problem integrating and understanding one another, right? So this is why our program is so important, and we'll talk more about that program. But this was about breaking down silos, and there's lots of ways you can do that. If you have any questions for us, please give us a DM. We want to hear from you. We want to help you be successful as an individual, as somebody looking for a job, or as somebody building out their company, or somebody that has been there and you have a company that you just need a new approach, or to help people transition back into the workforce. All right, folks, ready? We dance it in and we dance it out. Let's get ready to dance it out. Woo! Thanks for the great conversation. I loved it.
Yeah.
Woo!
Thank you, Bibiana. Congratulations.
Have a great week.